All right, we are joined by Mike Dillard, a good friend who is a legend in the marketing space, has been doing it a long time, and he has figured out a way to live life on his own terms. And one of the ways he's been able to do that is by building cash flow. I know I first got introduced to you over a decade ago. You were helping investors find, black box strategies for building, protecting, growing wealth. And I know you've put a lot of time into it. So Mike, thanks for joining me today.
Yeah, great to be here, Mark. It's interesting. I kind of feel like you've kind of taken over my mission and what I started doing in post 2008 when it comes to waking up people to what's happening in the world of finance, what's going on in the world of investing. And so I'm grateful for what you're doing.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks so much. Yeah. I remember when you first put that offer out, I think it was 2009, 2010, somewhere around there. Mm-hmm. And it was, the message was like, hey, the whole world's going down. The rich have different strategies that you're not aware of. And I want to kind of peel back the curtain and bring those to you. And so that really resonated with me, which is why I was a part of that. And I guess, I've just continued to try to build on that. I've kind of taken it to the forefront, but you haven't abandoned that either. I know you started your self-made man and you've been helping people kind of build wealth. So why don't you kind of just give us a background on what you've been doing the last couple of years and what you're working on now?
Well, I guess the story is actually a great segue into money and finance. I've been a self-made entrepreneur for 15, 16 years now. I've built 3 multiple 8-figure businesses, and all was kind of going fine and dandy until July of 2018. And one day I was just taking a break from work, playing, a little PUBG on the couch, and felt a little click back here in my brain. And I was like, it's kind of interesting. Didn't really think much of it, except I couldn't fall asleep that night, like at all. And then the next night, and then the next night. For about a week, didn't get a single minute of sleep, started to feel my body just shutting down. And things got scary very, very quickly. My doctor put me on Valium and Ambien, which I've never been on. I'm not a big pharmaceuticals person. And I was on a double dose of both of those. And that would get me about 90 minutes of disassociated, quote unquote, sleep. But that was the end of my business career for over 2 years. I went from, making $300,000 to $500,000 a month and building hydroponic systems and the podcast and all of these other companies to bed and couch bound for 2 years. And the worst of it lasted a year. That was, again, maybe an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours of sleep with a bunch of these drugs. Suicidal stuff kicked in because of those drugs. And we didn't know what had happened until about a year in. I finally went to a doctor after seeing about a dozen different physicians. Nobody could describe what I was going through or why. But a friend introduced me to Dr. Ann Shippey here in Austin, and I went to see her, and she gave me something called a mycotoxin test, which tests for toxic mold, basically. And I've never really heard of that, didn't know much about it. Took the test, and it's really interesting. Anything above 5 on the test is toxic, and you need to go address it. Goes into the red, right? The test topped out from a graphic standpoint at 50. So 0 to 50 is all it went to. My score numerically was over 20,000. And wow. So from a toxicity level, anything above 5 is bad. I had 21,000. So I was basically dying from this neurotoxin that was keeping my body and my brain awake 24/7 because it was basically being eaten alive by mold. And that started a 2-year healing process now. So I'm coming out the other side of it. But one of the hardest parts about that experience is that I couldn't work anymore.
Right.
And as an entrepreneur, we always look at our businesses kind of as a retirement fund, especially when you have a big business and you can send out a few emails or launch a new product and make, $500,000 to $1 million. That's a nice ability to have that you tend to fall back on and use as a backstop if you ever need it.
Yeah.
But never in my wildest dreams that I think I would find myself at the age of 40 doing, racing cars on the weekend and building a business to non-functional within 24 hours, and trying to pay for $50,000 a month in overhead and, all of the stuff that comes along with a business while you're bedbound all day and you can't write, you can't use your brain. That was a huge, huge wake up call for me. And so that ended up basically bleeding me dry over a 2-year period.
Yeah.
But it was a big light bulb. And as I started to come out of it about 2 years later, I was like, I need to really get focused on passive income because I never, ever, ever want to be in that position again. And that money needs to come from investments and not from, a business or an affiliate income, source or anything like that. And so that became my number one focus is how do you earn passive investment income and get it up to a specific goal. Our initial goal was $50,000 a month to cover all of the existing costs and overhead that we had. And then the long-term goal is up to $100,000 a month. And so I started to look around and to look at different opportunities and to see what made sense. And most importantly, what appealed to my personality type and my brain type, if you will, because I think that's a very important piece of the puzzle when it comes to investing and to building a business. But what I really discovered along the way is during that 2 to 3 year period is I had to go through a ton of different therapies to basically piece my brain back together and my neurochemistry. So transcranial magnetic, EMDR, 9 ketamine IVs, MDMA therapy, hypnotherapy. Gosh, there's probably 2 or 3 more that I'm forgetting, but I probably did 5 to 10 years worth of hard therapy work in 24 months. And the interesting part about that is that I really mastered neurochemistry and the subconscious. And what I realized is that all of us are operating from those 2 places. Those 2 factors have more of an impact on the financial decisions that we make than anything else that we do. Mm-hmm. And what I realized is that we all have patterns when it comes to money. We all have patterns when it comes to everything, but specifically we're going to talk about money. Right. And I could finally see my money patterns from the previous 40 years of my life for the very first time. And that was a fascinating superpower to acquire. Because once you become aware of your patterns, and I definitely had some good ones and I had some destructive ones, the world changed very quickly from that standpoint. And I can keep kind of going down those lines, but I'll stop here to see if you have a question first. So.
Hey, hold up just for a second. I want to tell you about something. I just got something cool in the mail I want to show you. And it is this new sleek package I just got with a brand new credit card. This isn't just any credit card. This is a BlockFi credit card that's powered by Visa and it's backed by Bitcoin rewards. So this is a Visa card. I can use it anywhere in the world that Visa is accepted. And the benefit of this BlockFi Visa card is that I get paid back in Bitcoin. Most of my other cards pay me in some sort of reward points. I get airline miles. I'm not very good at using those. They end up accumulating and I don't do anything with them. But getting to earn Bitcoin back with every single purchase is of course something that matters to me. Now, I know for a lot of people, they say that the price of Bitcoin is too high. So I say, well, you can always earn Bitcoin. You can get paid in Bitcoin, or you can just get cash back rewards on every purchase paid in Bitcoin with the BlockFi Visa credit card, used everywhere that Visa is accepted. And if you want to sign up for the Visa card that pays back in Bitcoin from BlockFi, there is a link in the description down below. Check it out.
Yeah, I mean, there's so much to unpack there. I definitely want to talk about the mental side of that. I want to talk about these out of the box kind of strategies that you've done to build cash flow, how important those things are, how other people can do the same thing. So I want to get into all that. But before we dig into all that, if we go back to kind of some of the stuff that you talked about, right off the bat, I was just thinking, so like this happened to you. I'm living in Puerto Rico right now. It's like damp all the time. Man, we've had such a problem with mold. I've had to replace both my daughter's bedroom sets twice because just got infested with mold on the beds and everything. It's crazy here. But I was thinking as you're talking how, you had this problem, which nobody knew what it was. I mean, you had to go see all these different people and, I'm sure you started with just your doctor probably like your traditional Western, through your PPO or HMO insurance or whatever that may be. And they probably knew nothing. They probably told you I guess they gave you the Ambien pharmaceuticals, right? So they prescribed you pharmaceuticals. What's like the answer for everything. But that answer didn't work for you. And so in order for you to get through this, you had to go find alternative ways to do this. And I think there's some good parallels with that, because it's the same thing with the financial system. So your financial advisor, you're going to go to them and they're going to say, oh, just be in the market for the long run. The market always goes up 6 or 8%, buy some bonds. But to survive, you have to take kind of responsibility for yourself and go find those out of the box solutions, right?
Yeah. One of the biggest lessons that I learned from the health experience is that you never take no for an answer. You never stop looking, you never stop searching, and you have to be proactive. I had to be proactive, and I had to say yes to everything and anything that was presented to me as a potential solution and try that. Right. And so that's definitely a big piece of the puzzle. And certainly the same goes for finance here. And we both know that, the gains that are possible and that you will traditionally get over the long run are directly proportional to your level of expertise and mastery in whatever it is that you invest in. And so if you take a very passive approach to investing and you just put your money in a fund, you're going to get mediocre results as a result of that. So for me, I've really learned to take a deep dive into both the mental game of money now, and then in the investment side of the house. For me, that's been crypto, but I'm sure we'll dive into that here in just a little bit. But yeah, getting really specific, drilling down and actively pursuing the answers for 1, 2, 3 years, however long it takes, and mastering that skill set is really what's required to achieve your goals if you have substantial ones.
Yeah. What I found, my sister's a ER doctor. And when she came out of medical school, she was like, told our family, stop, vitamins are ridiculous and forget your immune system. We just got to prescribe you stuff. She really came out of the box like that. And it took her a long time to, get rid of those blinders and start to see things. And now, unfortunately, she was forced out of her job in California, and she just got a job offer in Houston to go work for a functional medicine practice. Well, she doesn't know a lot about functional medicine, but they've agreed to teach her and all that. And so as a doctor, you have to forget everything you've been taught, which is difficult. And then you have to go out on your own to find those solutions. I've been working with my own self. I'm working on some new asset protection strategies. And when you go talk to traditional attorneys and CPAs, they're like doctors. They were just taught this system. But if you go out and find alternative strategies, those are there. The other thing that you said that I like about what you said is that I've heard it said, like, your mess is your message. And so, like, as bad as this was for you, you went and found all these things, and it helped you discover things about yourself that now not only have changed your life, but you can go teach other people. So I guess let's dig into that part specifically. So I guess I remember following your journey and listening about all these therapies that you've done and these discoveries that you've had. But I guess give us some of these misconceptions you had about money and how you're changing those things now.
Well, it's interesting. Whenever any of us make a decision in any aspect of our lives, we're doing it with the best knowledge and ability that we know how, right? And I've had enough life experience now, and going through this circumstance really gave me the ability to see through the matrix of your conscious mind. And that's what all of us are operating with right now. You and I are conversing with our conscious brains. You guys are consuming this and watching this with your brains. But about 95% of what it is that you're doing when it comes to the rest of your life is all operating from your subconscious. That includes your decisions when it comes to money. And so what I became aware of as I looked back at my history and my relationship with money is that I was addicted to adrenaline my entire life. Probably from the age of 3 or 4, I was competing in sports. As soon as I could get on a little bicycle, right? Took the training wheels off. I was literally at a BMX track with a helmet on competing. And that then turned into professional mountain bike racing, won the Texas state championships twice, That turned into Baja racing. I went and raced the Baja 1000 back in 2008. That was the very first time I strapped into a race car with a roll cage and a harness and a helmet. Was the Baja 1000, like the most dangerous race on the planet. So did that. And then that turned into road racing at Circuit of the Americas. So the bottom line is that, I would pursue the most adrenalized way to make a living, which is entrepreneurship. And then to relax on the weekends, I would go race cars at 150 miles an hour. Mm-hmm. So that's how I operated. And that also spilled over into how I approached investing. And so I've done very, very well for myself from a financial standpoint over my career. But as soon as I made money, I had to do something with it. And what ended up happening is as entrepreneurs, we're very comfortable with taking risks.
Right.
It doesn't bother us. In fact, we like it. We get a rush from that. But when you apply that same neurology to investing, you're going to lose your money because you don't keep your money by risking your money. So you don't build wealth by risking that wealth. You build it by keeping it. And so there's a conflict there. And it's a pattern that I see entrepreneurs live out over and over and over again, because we are all wired fairly similarly. And that is that we get into something called a make it, spend it, and then risk it cycle, right? We make a bunch of money and then we spend it on either another business venture, a new studio, a new computer, a new car, or we risk it investing in a buddy's startup, or again, our second business or whatever it may be. And sometimes it works out. Most of the time it doesn't. And then we have to make more money. And then we just repeat that cycle again. Mm-hmm. We don't understand that we're in that cycle because we, again, are making the decisions that we think are the most sound and in our best interest at any given time. You can only see this after you've done it enough times. And then with the guidance of somebody else who can kind of mirror back to you what it is that you've been doing with your life. And maybe once that's presented to you in a different way, then you have an opportunity to see it. Psychedelics have been that mirror for me. And so as I was going through that process, I could look back at my life and I was like, holy crap, this cycle just repeated over and over and over and over again. And the sad part is that it was going to continue to repeat over and over and over again until, as an entrepreneur, your body can't handle that level of stress anymore, and you can't rally after another big risk or loss or whatever it may be. And then you start to see entrepreneurs fade away, and they're not really in the game anymore.
Right.
So thankfully, I became aware of this pattern, and what I realized is that most people think investing is all about the strategy. Hey, Mike, just tell me, how you invest your money. What is the strategy that you're using? And that is the least important piece of the puzzle. An example or an analogy to kind of explain that is that you and I could go to, the Market Disruptors event coming up, and we could take everybody in the audience and we could all give them $100,000 and say, hey, each of you has to go invest this in the stock market. So we're all in the same asset class. We all have the same amount of principal. And we're going to come back to the event next year and see who did best. And there is going to be 100 different results when we come back. A few of those people are going to have a really great return. Some of them are going to have an average return. Most of them are going to have probably lost money or had a very mediocre low return.
Right.
And the reason for that is because people are making decisions around what to do with that money based on two different factors outside of what they know consciously. And that is your neurochemistry, which is the first one. And the second is your subconscious programming. And so your neurochemistry is really interesting. And I had to become very intimate with this because my body was basically dominated by cortisol going through this mold issue. And there are 5 different neurotransmitters or hormones that dominate our lives on a daily basis. There's dopamine, there's serotonin, there's oxytocin, there's endorphin, and then there's cortisol. Then you throw in adrenaline in there, which is not really a neurotransmitter, but adrenaline is a magnifier for the other 5. So it's kind of like a Red Bull, if you will, pouring fuel into the fire, and it magnifies the effect of those other 5 transmitters. And so all your brain wants is to do 2 things. It wants you to procreate, and it wants to keep you safe. And that's basically it. And as long as you're pursuing actions that are, in line with those two objectives, it doesn't care about anything else. And so when it comes to your neurochemistry, think about the advertisements that you see on social media today, or whatever the media that's putting out. It's designed to do one thing, which is to stir up a problem. This is marketing 101. We're going to stir up a problem, these bad feelings of stress and anxiety, or not enoughness, meaning we're going to have you compare yourself, ladies, to these supermodels, or, the clothes that they're wearing, or the jewelry or the shoes that they have, guys, the car that you're driving, whatever it may be. We're going to make you feel stressed, anxious, and insecure. And then that's going to produce cortisol in your body. Whenever you feel stress or anxiety, that's cortisol running through your bloodstream. Now, your body's mechanism to counter cortisol is dopamine and serotonin and oxytocin. Those are your feel-good hormones. And so your body feels stressed, and cortisol is your brain signal to say, we don't like what's happening here. We want you to go do something else. And we want you to go do something that's going to give you dopamine, serotonin, or oxytocin. And so the way that we do that in modern society these days is we go to the refrigerator and get food.
Yeah.
We drink alcohol, or we go shopping. Right? Those are the three fastest, most efficient ways to get rid of cortisol and to get those other feel-good hormones. And then we feel some relief. And that's why we see advertisements on television promoting all of those things constantly: food, alcohol, and goods that they want you to buy, right? Material items.
Yeah.
And so what happens over time, over a lifetime, and here we're just going to call it, Western society, is that as that pattern repeats, the more it repeats, the stronger it gets. This starts to put myelin pathways down in your brain, and these become the default circuits. And so each one of us, whenever we get stress or anxiety, have a default behavior that we turn to in order to get rid of that stress. In the past, for me, it was an adrenaline activity of some kind, which releases endorphin, or it was going shopping, going out and buying a Ferrari or a Porsche or whatever it may be, eating queso and drinking margaritas. Like that, those were my happy places, right?
Yeah.
Where I was just, life is as good as it gets when I was doing any one of those things. And so that becomes your program. And before you know it, if you're stressed out, you might have a thing of ice cream in your hand and you're not even aware of it. It's just a default behavior at this point. And when that happens, you're toast, because now you have embedded in your neurology a specific behavior set that requires you to spend money every single time you get stressed or anxious, which is what the media is putting you in a state of all day long. Now, the second piece of the puzzle is your subconscious program. And so when you feel stressed or anxiety and your body, you start to feel these emotions, the decision that you make when you feel those feelings is going to be determined by your subconscious program. Now, there are people, rare people out there, let's just say like Warren Buffett, and others who get pleasure when they save or invest their money. They get dopamine and serotonin when they save or invest their money. Yeah. They get cortisol when they spend money. And Warren Buffett is the epitome of this pattern. Yeah. Those people build wealth effortlessly. It is easy for them. Now, the rest of society, we have what I call an inverted dopamine response, meaning we get dopamine and serotonin when we spend money, which means it is literally going to be impossible for us to accumulate wealth over the long run.
Yeah.
And so, I
wanted to let me jump in right there if I can. So this was some questions I had as you were talking about this. So you personally, you grew up as an adrenaline junkie. You grew up racing BMX and Baja and racing cars. And I was like, oh, me too. That's like kind of fits my lifestyle as well. And so it seems like a lot of the stuff you were talking about was in regards to these risky people. I liked what you said in the beginning that the wealthy they build wealth by keeping it and not risking it. I recently heard Tony Robbins speak at the funnel hacking event in Orlando 2 weeks ago, I think. And he said that entrepreneurs are like gladiators. the more they do it, the more likely they are to die. Right. Every time the gladiator went in the ring, he was probably to die. And same with entrepreneur. And I think investors are the same way. Like you could be building wealth for 10 years and one bad deal, you lose it all. And I know I deal with all these investors coming into my groups, and it seems like they're all looking for that next big win. Can I get the hot crypto or the whole gold stock, whatever is going to get me 1,000% return? And everyone's trying to optimize for the upside. And I keep trying to tell them, like, professional investors, they always try to manage the downside.
They're pursuing adrenaline. So when I'm listening to that and listening to your story, and it resonates with me, I was going to ask you, and I think this is where you're transitioning to, is that there's also people that are on the opposite side of that. So some people are super risk adverse. And so they don't want to start businesses. They don't want to risk money because they're risk adverse as well. So as I was listening to this, it sounds like you're setting up for risky people. But I think what you're saying now is there are people like Warren Buffett who are risk adverse, and maybe their dopamine levels get triggered opposite ways. Or where do people that are the opposite of this, people that are too afraid to invest, where do they fit into that? Yeah, that's a different category. So to kind of sum up, Warren Buffett has a internal chemical reward system that rewards him for saving and saving money and building wealth.
Right.
And it punishes him for spending money. The vast majority of us have an inverted system where it's backwards. Okay. We get punished neurochemically for saving money, and we get rewarded for spending it. And we can try to fight that from a conscious level. I'm going to make a budget. I'm going to put the buckets plan in place from Profit First or from Dave Ramsey or whatever. And I'm going to start to allocate money and invest that on a regular basis. And the challenge with that is that all of those require conscious willpower. It's no different than going on a diet.
Yeah.
Same thing. For some people, having a lean body and eating well is effortless. For other people, it requires willpower, commitment, goals, going to the gym, a personal trainer. It is just a nonstop job and work.
Right.
And the reason that it's work is because their conscious goals, which is in this case is to save money and build wealth, is in conflict with their subconscious program. The challenge is your just requires energy and willpower, and your subconscious default program requires none. And so your willpower is going to last 6 weeks, 2 months, 3 months, and then it's going to get tired and it's going to fall off. And the default program of spending money and pursuing adrenaline or risk taking is going to remain in place, and you're going to go back to that. And that's what repeats this cycle, right? The challenge is, or the trick is that if you can reprogram this default programming through subconscious work or different things that, we show people how to do now and that I've had to do for myself, is that if you reprogram this to a regular dopamine response like Warren has, then saving money becomes effortless at that point.
It becomes fun.
Investing becomes easy.
Yeah.
It becomes fun because now you're getting rewarded chemically. You feel good when you save money and build wealth. But this has to happen first in order to then worry about the strategy. Because if you just focus on the strategy and this isn't changed, this is how you end up like a celebrity or like a professional athlete or like a lottery winner. All of these super talented people, celebrities and athletes who are incredibly successful and very, very intelligent, all make hundreds of millions of dollars, and they all file for bankruptcy. That's because they didn't fix the subconscious program that then translated into the decisions that they made with that money.
Yeah.
And so those are the big piece of the puzzle. Is you've got to figure out your neurochemistry and what your reward system is, and identify that and then rewire that. And then two, you have to figure out your subconscious programs. What are those? And for the vast majority of people, the crowd you mentioned next, let's talk about that. The one who has trouble making money, right? The really risk averse people.
I just wanted to take a second to explain to you one more time just how cool having this new BlockFi Visa credit card is. I've started to move a lot of my bills over to get paid from this. Of course, all my business supplies, I'm starting to pay for this, my advertising budgets, and I'm starting to run as much as I can through it because I'm getting paid a percentage back of every single transaction in Bitcoin. We want to save in Bitcoin because Bitcoin is an asset that goes up in value because of the deflationary nature of it. And we want to spend our fiat. So I'm spending my fiat through my BlockFi Visa card, and I'm getting back Bitcoin that I can save and I can hold I expect it to go up in value a lot. I expect to hold my Bitcoin. I'm going to pass it to my kids and my grandkids, and hopefully my great grandkids will have my Bitcoin one day. So I'm going to save it. I'm going to spend my fiat through this card, and I'm going to earn back Bitcoin that I'm going to save. If you want to get one, there's a link down below.
They tend
before we jump into the risk adverse people, before we jump into that whole thing, I was just thinking as you were talking about this, you were talking about how people can stay in shape and how it's effortless for them. And so I was just thinking about just myself, and like, I intermittent fast every day. I go to the gym. I've done it for 25 years. I don't think about it. I stay very lean. I keep and it is effortless for me. And I've even gotten to the point where, a lot of people have to use all this willpower to stay away from like certain foods and not overeat. And for me, it's effortless. Like, I just look at that and go, it's going to make me feel like crap. I don't want to eat it. And so it's gotten very easy. But then other areas of my life, like trying to manage my time management and keep my schedule clear, things like that, I use my willpower and I sign up and I'm going to do it, and I'm really good for a week or two, and then I start falling off. Yeah. And so I was just listening to that as you're talking. It's like you're talking to me. So I understand, because I've been able to do it in areas of my life, like with my health, for example, that it can become very effortless. But I guess trying to figure out how to make that switch is the difficult part.
Yeah, and the reason it's difficult is because it's invisible.
Yeah.
It's not a conscious program. It is an invisible subconscious program.
Right.
And you and I none of us can see our subconscious programs. We can only see the end result of them. And those become clues in the form of cycles. And so if you can see the cycles and the clues, you can be like, I have a program here that's screwing shit up for me. And then you have to have the assistance of someone outside who is experienced in this, who can help you identify specifically what that program is, when it was installed, and then reprogram it. Hypnotherapy is a remarkably effective way to do that. The second group of people that we were mentioning is the group of people who have difficulty when it comes to, making money. Right. There are entrepreneurs like you who've been able to make money almost in an effortless way for our careers. Right. Mm-hmm. And then you go to Funnel Hacking Live or these other things, and there's hundreds of people in the audience who've been trying to build a business for 5 or 10 years, and they've never made a dime, or they've made very little, and it's never been consistent, and it's just their lifelong struggle.
Right.
And the reason for that is because they have a subconscious program that they're running into. Usually that is the result of a program that was instilled in childhood that would indicate that making money is unsafe or bad. An example of that would be they might have been 5, 6, 7 years old, going to church, and the pastor said, money is the root of all evil, right? Mm-hmm. Or they might have had a parent that said, rich people are bad, or their boss makes all the money and it's not fair. Or, the mom might have said, hey, let's not get too flashy of a car. Your friends are going to judge us, or whatever it may be, right? And if we understand that we're tribal creatures, that for 99% of our history as a species, we relied on our tribe in order to survive. Mm-hmm. Only in the last couple of 100 years have we been able to survive and thrive as individuals without a tribe. But our wiring in our brain and our nervous system is wired for survival, which is its first priority. Procreation is its second. And in order to do that, it believes and knows that we have to have a tribe. And so if your brain picked up several times when you were young, just it could be in a background hearing, overhearing conversations that rich people are bad, or money is harmful, or money is trouble, then it acquired that information, socked it away in its subconscious for future reference. You are probably not even aware that it took place. But now, as you try to make money when you get older, you keep tripping up when it comes to this process, or screwing it up, or not getting a result. And that's because your brain is running a program that says, if we make money, we're going to be viewed as bad, we're going to be kicked out of the tribe, and then we're going to die.
Right.
And so if that program is running, you're never going to be able to make money. And if you make it, you're not going to be able to keep it for long. This is also a lottery winner example. They make $100 million in the lottery, and the money's gone within 2 years. And so if that program is running, doesn't matter how many courses you buy. It's irrelevant. Right. And so you have to go in, find that program, and rewire that and reframe it. And the good news is that you can do all of this. And so you can retrain your neurochemistry and your reward system so that you get dopamine and serotonin when you save money instead of spending it. You can go in and you can root out these subconscious programs, and you can identify the moment that they took place. Again, hypnotherapy is a phenomenal way to do that, where you can go back under hypnosis and see the moment when you acquired this belief. Maybe it was your parent who said something or whatever it may be, and you can go back and you can then reframe and rewrite that story, knowing what you know now. And once you do that, lo and behold, your behavior, your decision-making, and your results in life are going to start to change in the days and months and weeks ahead. And that to me was what transformed my life, because as I went through this work and I'm like, hey, I need to focus on passive income. I am now aware of these patterns that were running in my life where I would make millions of dollars and then lose it. I don't want to repeat that pattern anymore. I became aware of the programs that were, the cause of those patterns, and I rewrote them. And then I created basically a system that retrained my neurochemical reward system. And now money is as easy as eating right for you, as it is for me to save and keep the money that I've made. And so now my conscious goals are now basically aligned with my subconscious program, and the results are, through the roof.
Yeah.
And then now we're ready to talk about strategy. Now we're ready to talk about investment strategies and how to actually do that. So that's the third and final piece of the puzzle.
Yeah. So before we dive into the strategy and how to actually do that, a couple of things I'm just thinking of. So I've, like I said, listened to your story. I've done quite a bit of research and study into these different ways to retrain the brain and whatnot, but you're talking about hypnotic therapies. Maybe a lot of people listening are like, so they're going to make me quack like a duck or bark like a dog or whatever, right? I don't know what people have in their mind, but maybe, and you mentioned all these different types of therapies that you've done, including psychedelic therapies, et cetera. Maybe just kind of explain what this hypnotic therapy is. Maybe it's not as weird and as some people maybe think it is.
Yeah. I mean, when people think of hypnotherapy, they think of stage hypnosis, which is when, you're at a magic show or whatever, and somebody hypnotizes people on the stage and it makes them quack like a duck. Exactly. As you mentioned, this is not quite like that. A good hypnotherapist is basically going to help you get into a meditative state, and you're going to get into a certain brainwave state, alpha or theta state. And in that brainwave state, you can access and speak to your subconscious. You can recall things from your memory that you would not be able to from a conscious state. And so that's really all that it is. If you have meditated and you can get to a really, really deep meditative state, it is extremely similar to that. You're still aware of your surroundings.
The theta brainwave state is where you're when you're waking or falling asleep, or also sometimes activated when you're in the shower, which is why maybe right as you're falling asleep or in the shower, you have an idea like, oh, that's where that thing was, because you're going through that period, right? So, So that's the way to do it. Now, so I'm familiar with that. What I'm curious of, because I've never actually done it myself, is then you do it guided. So then you have like a therapist. And so then as opposed to me trying to do it when I'm waking, I was doing it for a while. Like when I'd wake, I'd hit my snooze. And then while I was in that period trying to do like my affirmations and try to kind of retrain things like that. But I'm guessing in a guided way, like maybe you kind of give them some stuff, and then while you're in that state, super meditative state, then they kind of guide you through that, or how does that work?
Yeah, it's interesting. The brain is fascinating because it creates associations that are you would just never know were there. And a good hypnotherapist is critical because they're almost like a cartographer, where over the course of 3, 4, 5, 6 sessions, they're starting to map your subconscious structure and how different events in your life or beliefs in your life relate to the others. And it's almost like untying a knot here, which leads to the next knot, which leads to the next knot, which leads to the source. And it's their skill set and their ability to, through their years of experience, like the one I worked with has worked with 15,000 patients one-on-one, 15,000 sessions. Like, he knows that if you have a certain belief or pattern, this is most likely the scenario because he's seen it all before. Mm-hmm. And so you just start to follow these breadcrumbs until you get to the source. And that's really where the skill and the value and the magic of a good hypnotherapist comes into play. But the experiences that you can have, at least for me, can be unbelievably powerful as a psychedelic experience, meaning the most powerful work that I've ever done is MDMA therapy. That is not legal in the United States. Do not do that without the support or guidance of an experienced guide or therapist. It's an extremely powerful experience, but it needs to be done in the proper, safe context and setting. Aside from that, if you don't have access to go do that kind of work, maybe in South America or somewhere else where it is legal, then hypnotherapy is the closest thing that I found to it. Meaning when you typically get to a knot that's one of your core beliefs or stories and you unwind that, you'll have a very emotional reaction. I remember after one of my first sessions, I was like dry heaving and crying for about an hour.
Wow.
It was such a big release of something that was just deeply, deeply stored in my body when it came to self-worth and different things like that, that it just all finally came up and was released out of the body. But at that moment, it was then gone. Like it was no longer in me and it was out of me. And a good hypnotherapist at that point, when you're at that moment, when you've recognized the story and maybe you're reliving it and experiencing it, and it's in a very emotional time, that's also the magic, because a good therapist will help you then reprogram that moment and to see it from a different perspective, see it from an adult's eyes and who you are now versus the 5-year-old or 7-year-old when you were getting beaten or abused or bullied or whatever it may be. Mm-hmm. And once you rewrite that in that state, that new program will stick. That will become the new memory. And it will have the new meaning associated with that. And so if you took someone who acquired the belief when they were young that they were never going to succeed, that they weren't worth anything, that they were, a bad kid or whatever.
Investing was risky or whatever.
Yeah, investing was risky. Money is bad. And you can go in and reprogram that. You completely transform the human in that moment moving forward. They start a new life at that moment. And so it's an extremely, extremely powerful methodology. But it's what needs to be done if you are not getting the results that you want to get and you've struggled in certain areas of your life for many, many years. This is why that's happening, and this is how you fix it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Is that that's neuroplasticity, meaning that your brain can retrain those neural pathways?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Yeah, absolutely. Cool. A great basic thing that we teach, from a neurochemistry standpoint. So let's not talk about deep subconscious work for a moment, but let's just talk about something that somebody can use today. Let's say you get stressed or anxious and all of a sudden you have a desire to spend money or to go have a drink. How do you interrupt that pattern? And the single most effective way to modulate the nervous system is through the breath. And this is something that I would have never believed. I didn't really put any kind of, value into until I had to learn how to use breath work in order to bring my adrenalized cortisol state down low enough to just function, because it was at a 10 out of 10, even if I was just sitting here talking to you.
Wow.
Because of the mold, right? Like my body was being eaten alive. So it's literally trying to run away and get to someplace safe, even though I'm just sitting here having a conversation with you. Mm-hmm. And so you can use the breath to control the nervous system. That's the single most powerful and effective way to do it. It's free and it's easy to do. And you can do this after this interview and test it out for yourself. But the best way to demonstrate it is to take just 2 or 3 minutes. And if you find yourself maybe in your car and you're on your way to the gas station to buy a bottle of wine or beer, whatever it may be, and you recognize this pattern in your life now and you want to stop it, is just pull over and take 6 deep breaths in through the nose, hold it for 6 or 7 seconds, let it out as slow as you can. Once you've let it out, hold it again for 6 or 7 seconds, and then repeat that pattern drawing in for 6 or 7, hold for 6 or 7, out for 6 or 7, and then hold at state 0 for 6 or 7 and repeat, and do that 6 times. What you're going to find is your body is going to just kind of boom. It's going to get really, really quiet and grounded. You're going to get saliva that's released into your mouth. Your mouth is going to start to water. You're probably going to get a little bit sleepy, but you're also going to notice that desire that you had because you were on a mission, kind of in a high beta brain state, is now greatly dissipated, if not gone. And at that moment, you've created space in a window where you can make a different decision consciously. And you can be like, you know what? I don't actually need to go do that right now. And you can turn the car around. And that is the beginning of creating a new neural pathway in your brain. And it's starting to destroy the previous one that was the default. And it's as simple as that breathwork exercise.
Yeah, great. That's a great application. I've done some things like that. I think many things where I've done like even surfing, because I've done a lot of breath work surfing, so I can hold my breath for long periods of time. And so, let's say that I'm surfing in some big waves. I know there may be a hold down coming, and you paddle outside and you're out of breath. And the first thing you have to do is regain that, bring your adrenaline down. And so doing that sort of a breathing exercise, the parasympathetic nervous system, bring that down. I've used things like that to try to go to sleep and stuff like that as well. So great points. Let's transition a little bit into some of that strategy if we can. I know we don't have too much longer to go. For everybody listening, we'll say Mike did mention earlier this Market Disruptors live event coming up in November in Miami. Mike's going to be speaking there and actually holding a workshop teaching people how to do these strategies and build cash flow specifically is the most requested thing that we have at the event. So there will be a link down below for that. But go ahead and transition and kind of tell us a little bit about that strategy.
Well, it's interesting. This is probably the single most challenging time in my lifetime to invest.
Anybody's lifetime, yeah.
Because there are so many unknowns, right? There are, the economy and what happens with our investments is completely dependent upon what some guy says from the Fed as far as what their monetary policy is going to be.
Yeah.
And how the F do you invest in a world like that, right? For a long period of time. And
you're trying to read someone's mind,
It's gambling now. Like it really is gambling in the economy that we live in. And so, for me, we've had we don't do anything crazy, different, or I would say new. We had a rental property here in Austin that we owned free and clear that was producing about $2,500 a month in cash flow. But I will say what we do that is maybe a little bit different is that we like to create what I look at as a wealth spiral, meaning we'll find an asset that produces cash flow, and then we'll take that cash flow and we'll put it into another asset that produces more cash flow, and then we'll put it into another asset that produces more cash flow. Mm-hmm. So an example of that would be that home produced about $2,500 a month in passive income for us. We would then take that $2,500 a month and we would put it in a crypto, specifically Matic, Polygon, if you will. And we would stake that on Celsius, which pays out 10%. And then, we've got quite a bit of Matic. So we're still making right now about $600 a week in Matic. So what is that? Another $2,400 a month. And then we're taking that cash flow and we're putting it into another crypto, whether it's Solana or Cardano, that are also producing passive staking income, right? And so for us,
so you got 2,500 from real estate going into 2,400 a month in crypto passive, and then they taking that into another 2,400. So then you're stacking that up. So then you're making whatever 7,500 a month instead of just the initial 2,500 and spending it.
Yeah, exactly. And so that's really what we've been doing. And I'll just give you kind of my strategy or how we're looking at about it. My area of expertise and my strongest category when it comes to investing is crypto. I've been buying Bitcoin since 2013, right? Mm-hmm. And so 95% of my net worth has been in crypto for years now, and it continues to be in crypto. And so for us, it's been all about staking, and the plan is to sell at the top of this bull market cycle, whenever that may be, take that money, stake a large portion of it in stable coins on Celsius or whatever app that you want to use, Blockfolio, which usually pay 8 to 10% right now. And then to take that cash flow, which would be significant, it would be probably $50,000 to $100,000 a month in passive income from staking that crypto in stable coins. And so what we've done is, since we're staking it in stable coins, we're now outside of the risk of the stock market, right? The stock market could go up or down. The crypto market could go up or down. It's irrelevant. We are in stable coins. We're making 10% a year. And if we're making it, let's say $100,000 a month in yield, for doing that, that means I've got roughly, let's just say $10 million staked. That's producing $1 million a year in passive income. So $80,000 a month. We're then going to take that $80,000 a month and then start to diversify that into other asset classes, either back into real estate, depending upon where the market's at, or into Tesla stock. Things that I think are going to hedge against inflation, or opportunities like Tesla that I think are at the beginning wave of this next era of our world and our economy. I think Tesla is the single best investment someone could make over the next 5 to 10 years outside of crypto. I don't think people understand exactly how big Tesla is going to be 10 years from now and how many industries that they're going to be involved in beyond just cars. I call them an alien technology company, meaning that what they're doing is so far and beyond what the legacy automakers have done, that they can never be caught. No one will ever be able to catch up with them. They're at an exponential growth rate from not just sales, but from technology development, that nobody's going to ever catch them. And now they're moving into robotics. They're moving into AI. They're moving into all of these different categories that most people don't even think about. They're already in the insurance industry, and they're disrupting that industry. And every time they walk into any one of these new industries, they completely turn it on its head and disrupt it, and they become the dominant predator in that space.
Right.
And at the speed of their development and what they're doing, again, all they're going to do is destroy the previous and existing companies, and they're going to be the alpha predator. And so for me, that's a company that I would like to invest in. The problem is that they don't produce cash flow right now. Right. It's a good wealth multiplier, but it's not as good as crypto. Right. So for me, I want to take the dividends and the passive income that our passive income producing assets are yielding, and I want to put it in, a stock like Tesla like that for the long run. I don't want to take my principal and just invest it in Tesla and not get yield from it. Mm-hmm. So that really is kind of the approach that we're taking, is take our money, make us more money, and then take those returns and then invest it into these other asset classes or categories, instead of writing a check and sending a wire, outright. So
yeah, what I like about that, it's a kind of like a strategy I've taught. I call it the velocity of money, which is basically the velocity of money in the economy is how fast a dollar moves through. So I pay you $20 for consulting, and then you go pay $20 to get your tire changed. And then that guy takes $20 and goes buy, pays his workers. They take the $20 to go buy tacos. So it's like that how fast it moves through, but we can also do it how fast we can move those dollars through our investments. So if to your example, you put, you get $2,500 a month, you put another investment, $2,500 back, and so forth. And you really can spend, it's how many times can you spend that $1? How many jobs can that $1 be doing? And just like the velocity of money in the economy, the faster you can get that velocity moving through your own investments, then the better off you're going to be. So that's good. I'm curious, you mentioned, kind of being very, very heavily into, if not extremely into, maybe what Raoul Paul would call irrationally, what did he call it? Irrationally long or something like that, into crypto, and then maybe getting out at the end of the cycle. What are your strategies for getting out, and how do you predict to be able to know when to get out of or when that top of the cycle is?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right?
Yeah.
So, it's interesting. Even this previous top here, just a few months ago in 2021 at 64K, none of us in the market thought that was the top. None of the traditional signs were there, like none of them. And so none of us sold, right? I've held all the way through that, and then I've been buying more on the dip. But if I could go back in time, sure, I would have sold and then bought back in at a 50% discount.
Hindsight's
the one
so clear.
indicator, the one indicator that did trigger the actual top was the pi cycle top indicator. And it's, out of the top 9 or 10 indicators that everybody follows, that one said, this is the top, it's time to sell. And none of the others did. I was like, no, this must be wrong. And sure enough, it absolutely nailed it. And
did it nail the buyback in too?
I wasn't looking for the buyback in. So I'd have to go back and look at that. But all I know is that, holy crap, that thing got it when everything else was wrong. And it has nailed it during all of the other 3 to 4 previous tops since 2013. Mm-hmm. And so it has a 100% track record now, even though that looks like it's going to be a mid-cycle top. Great. Awesome. It's still got it right. So when the pi cycle top indicator goes off again, I will be selling. I don't really own any Bitcoin. I'm all in altcoins. And so that is an indicator for Bitcoin, which usually means, great, it's time to sell your Bitcoin. I would move money into altcoins if I were doing that at that point, but I'll be looking for an altcoin top within the next 2 to 4 weeks after that, which is traditionally what it's taken previously. After Bitcoin is topped, we'll see the top in altcoins 2 to 4 weeks later. And at that point, I'll be averaging out probably 10% at a time over a 10-day period. And I'm not going to try and time the actual top. This time I'm gonna average out and be much more conservative and a little bit more mature in my approach compared to trying to do it in 2017. So
one interesting thing. I was having dinner with a buddy here on the island. It's kind of one of my new best friends because I have like 2 of them right now. But he runs a hedge fund, pretty good sized hedge fund. And, they did some Bitcoin stuff, but he's not into Bitcoin now. He's all in on right now, uranium and oil. But anyway, we were talking about Bitcoin and the one thing that's unique about Bitcoin compared to any other asset that he invests into, uranium or oil right now, is we have the on-chain data analytics. Yeah. And so we've just never had access to information like that before. And when you take the whole picture, including what the fundamentals are, the news, the political cycles, the Fed, what they're doing. But also then you take some of the on-chain data, it starts to show a lot more, transparency, a lot bigger of a picture than what you would normally get just in traditional assets. So maybe there's something there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And the transparency of the, Bitcoin itself, right? The code itself. We already know the halving schedule. We know the max capacity. We have data that is not available anywhere else. And could you imagine if, people from the Fed came out and they said, you know what, we're going to change the Bitcoin, or let's just say like there was the equivalent of that for Bitcoin, or like, we're going to change the total supply of Bitcoin from 21 million to 31 million.
Right.
Or maybe we're not. I haven't decided yet. We'll let you know in the next quarter, right? That's essentially what they're doing with the interest rate right now when it comes to the US economy. And it's like, how in the world can you invest in an environment like that? And thankfully that environment doesn't exist in Bitcoin. And I think the more people get jerked around by policymakers, the more they're going to find appeal in the reliability, if you will, or the transparency of Bitcoin and crypto. Because it doesn't exist like that anywhere else. And so let them keep poking the economy and screwing with the dollar and just messing with the levers and the buttons they have access to, because the more they do that, the more they're going to screw things up and the better Bitcoin's going to look. So
yeah, I for forever, for a decade or longer, I'm like, no, they can't keep printing. No, you can't raise the debt ceiling. No. And now I'm just like, just bring it. Like, just print 20 trillion. Like, let's just get it over with, kind of a thing. So that's interesting. But great. Better for Bitcoin.
Yeah,
right. I mean, it's inevitable. Like, let's just get this thing over with, I guess. Man, there's so much more that I would like to dig into with you, but I know we were kind of maxed out on time here. So we'll go ahead and wrap it up with that. Where do you want to, where should people follow you for more? Where do you want to put people?
I haven't updated MikeDillard.com in almost a year, so that's not really useful. But if you, I guess, found the money stuff we talked about today interesting, richereveryday.com is where I teach that. And if not, realmike at Real Mike Dillard on Instagram is usually where I'm most active on a daily basis, kind of talking about what's going on in the crazy world that we live in and how we're preparing for the changes that are taking place right now. Obviously, you're very, very far down that rabbit hole as far as even moving to a different country and things like that. But that's something that, we think about and work on a daily basis, as well as how do we prepare for and position ourselves, not just financially, but physically, for this crazy totalitarian, agenda that's being rammed down our throats right now. So.
Yeah, man, such big points. I would love to jump in and talk about that stuff, but we'll have to table that. But I know we're both focused on that. I'm planning on being in Austin next month at the meeting, so that's going to be awesome. And really focusing on. I know you are, and back to the event, the Market Disruptors Live event. We'll be focused on like what's happening over the next couple of years, and what do we do to survive that, and building that cash flow, getting your mind right, getting your body right. I mean, those are all ways to do that. Building community, which is a big piece. I know that's kind of what you guys are working on in Austin, what we'll talk about next month, and at the live event, build that community out as well. So with that, we'll go ahead and sign it off. Thanks so much, Mike.
All right, Mark, thanks for having me, brother. Thank you.